Frieren and her companion spent the next 6 months with the monk known as Craft. On top of all of the things they had learned about Craft, besides being a man of the cloth, he was also an elf, just like Frieren. This led to some speculation, especially among the youngsters of the group, wondering how Frieren would feel about spending time with a male elf. You know, the potential of a forming romance or a budding sort of flame. But nothing of the contrary ever happened. In fact, it was as if the two were total strangers, and that they were. But you would think that being a part of a race that rarely ran into each other on the same continent at any given time, that there'd be more excitement to finding someone else like you. But it was quite the opposite. In fact, for Frieren, it was a feeling she had come quite used to. And for Kraft, he felt the same. The two of them were out in the forest one day, gathering some supplies and preparing for their journeys. With the blizzard now finally starting to clear and the weather becoming manageable, they knew they'd be going their separate ways sooner or later. Kraft couldn't help but ask about Frieren's past, about all the things she'd done and accomplished, asking what her goal was in life. Frieren explained about trying to get to the land of heaven, and Kraft knew that place very well, and many people that tried to get there. But Frieren also wanted to ask, why would someone such as himself wish to become a man of the cloth? There were many religions and many practices, and elves were all the same, but still, the idea of believing in something higher than yourself when you come from the elf race, well, it's a lot easier said than done. You imagine what life will be like when you finally take your last breath, what awaits you at the pearly gates. But so much time passes that very dream becomes little more than a myth, child's play. You might think about it, perhaps when you reach the end of your life, but the end so often is far in the distance, say from external circumstances such as a rare disease that can't be cured or a mortal wound or straight up death in the most uncruel of ways. An elf lived many lifespans, many civilizations that rose and fall, religions that came along with it, everyone having their own interpretation of what heaven and hell would be like. For Kraft, he found peace and solace in that, believing that there was something greater than himself, that by doing good for others, it would bring life's own reward, and that in service to his goddess, he would soon find his place in heaven. Of course, for Frieren, she didn't share those same sentiments. It's easy to see why, given our predicament, Kraft said. We live many lifetimes over what an average human will possibly see. Even now, the companions you have along the way will become nothing more but a distant memory for you, just as your hero party did before. It's uncontrollable, incurable, what we elves experience. You could say that we are cursed with the burden of trying to form a legacy, something that will live on past ourselves. But I like to think that we ultimately become legacy. We become legacy? Frieren would ask. Indeed. Even if we live extremely long lifespans, I like to think that we carry the lives that we meet along the way, the people that we impact. We get a rare opportunity, an opportunity to see what we can accomplish firsthand, an ability to see what awaits us. All our good deeds, or bad, they don't go unpunished or unrewarded. I guess what I'm trying to say is, cherish your friends. Cherish all the friends you make along the way and keep them in your memory. Before long, both groups would set off in their respective destinations. Kraft would give his regards to Frieren, noting that, given their circumstance, they were likely to run into one another in the next century or two. But till then, to wish them well and to prosper. From there, the four would make their way to the next part of their journey, a place known as the Village of the Sword. There, a small girl who was now the village chief, the 49th to be specific, who took the place of her grandmother who served before her, and knew Frieren. She could only leave behind a few parting words and messages that the little girl would give off to Frieren. She had promised to be back in about half a century, but give or take a year or two, and sometimes people don't last as long as you'd think. One of yet the many flaws of the elven people. More often than not, you would say your goodbyes, promising that you would soon return, and you thought nothing of it, only to realize that the time flowed longer than you might have expected, and the people who waited for you tragically passed away, leaving only behind those who could carry on their message and their will. The village was being overrun with monsters, and Frieren and her party would help in behalf of the heroes' party that left them so long ago. The Village of the Sword was very much steeped in culture and in history. It was said that this village was home to the famed hero sword that was used by Himmel, the warrior, that used it to defeat the Demon King over a century. And yet, as they continued their excavation, defeating all the monsters in the area and restoring peace, Stark would come across a cave. And inside of that cave was the legendary hero sword still embedded in the rock. Everyone got a chance to see for themselves and uncovered the truth. The monsters were attracted to the sword, but given the barrier placed on the cave, they couldn't enter. It's what led them to congregating around that area, probably the strong source of mana that was being irradiated from the blade itself. But it left Stark feeling lied to. The legend had always been that Himmel, the great warrior, pulled that sword from the stone and used that sword to vanquish the Demon King. That was the story of legend. Everyone knew that story, the story of the hero sword. And yet, it was still here. They looked to Frieren for answers, and she would explain. It seems you've all uncovered the truth. Yes, Himmel never pulled the hero's sword from the stone. He was unable to do so. Seriously? Stark would say. Then why? Why create that false legend? What's even the point if it never happened? Frieren remembered that day quite fondly. It had always been Himmel's goal to use that hero's sword, believing that it would be a part of his legacy, the part that would always be remembered. Every boy, every adventurer had that dream of being the legendary hero, the one chosen, the one fated to do great things. The sword served to be more than just the weapon of choice. It was the weapon of confirmation. To be the one to pull the sword from the stone, it proved that you were worthy, that you were destined, that there was a force out there greater than yourself, that this was something that you needed to do. And yet, many a men mighty and powerful, from all walks of life, could never pull that sword from the stone. For Himmel, he thought that he would be different. He was so convinced. And yet when the time came, he couldn't do it. Of course, Heater, a fellow orphan along with Himmel, who had grown up with him, knew that this was Himmel's dream, and knew very much how disheartened he might be. But he didn't let this discourage him, no. He promised himself that he would kill the Demon King. He would bring peace to the realms, even without the legendary sword. And that was something he managed to achieve. He kept his promise. But what would that mean for the people? This was something else that Frieren noticed in her lifetime. The hero's journey often got romanticized. So much so that people often overlook the details in only the favor of the glamour, the action, the glory, the tears of blood and defeat. Those were the things that people cared for more, the theatrics, not about the individual. Contrary to what many would say about Himmel, he was far greater than what any legend could ever say about him. Far more powerful than any mere words of a story that could ever do him justice. And he did all of that without some stupid magical sword. He proved why he was more of a warrior than many that came before him. So many gave up on the very notion and idea of trying to fight and kill the Demon King when they found that they weren't worthy of pulling that sword. For many of them, they left discouraged, disheartened. They became bitter, jealous, filled with rage, so much so that for them, their journey seemingly ended on that day. But Himmel wasn't like other men. He would not let his destiny be defined by some artifact. His destiny was what he made of it, what he chose and willed it to be. That was the sort of strength that was endearing to Frieren. That was the sort of thing that made her want to follow him. He did not let himself be ruled by fear, by superstition, by fate, or by will. He willed and carved his own path. In a sense, it almost disgusts her to think that people would atone all of his accomplishments to some stupid magic sword. Francis, however, would put his hand on Stark's shoulder. It means that your hero was even far greater of a hero. You don't have to look at it as a negative. If anything, it should inspire us. It means that Master Himmel accomplished everything he sought to accomplish. And he didn't need a magic sword to do it. He did it with his own hands, with the help of his friends. That's all that mattered. Frieren was proud of Francis for coming to that realization, for understanding that truth that many failed to get. After making their peace and saying their goodbyes, they continued on until they found yet another town. This time, one different from your average village. There was actually a lot more. More inns, places to stay, shops, things to do. A place where you could get comfortable for a while. For Frieren, she wanted to make preparations. Today was Stark's birthday, and of course, both Francis and Fern were only just finding out about this, but Frieren already had a plan. The elfin woman looked at her students smugly as she reached into her bag and pulled out what she had been wishing to give Stark as a gift. It was a potion. Okay, but what's it do? Oh, this? Oh, Francis, my boy, this here can dissolve all forms of clothing. I think a boy like him could use a fine gift like, hey! Fern would snatch it away. I thought I told you not to buy such a vulgar gift. Wait, no, please, don't, no, not my head, no, my clothes! Before Francis even got a chance to get a peek, he caught 2 fingers to the eyes. Ow! Oh, my eyes! Oh, my eyes! Ah! Oh, oh, no! And a swift kick to the butt, kicking him out of the room, as Fern grabbed hold of the bed sheets and threw it at her master. It serves you right for buying such a vulgar thing. Seriously. It cost me a lot, you know. Oh! Francis was trying to rub his eyes in the hall. What the hell was that for? What? Did you want to see Miss Frieren naked? Pervert. I'm not a pervert. I'm a growing boy. And no, I wouldn't want to see her naked. I mean, whatever. We gotta go find him a gift, don't we? Both Fern and Francis would travel throughout the town, trying to find where Stark had gone. As they traveled, they met many people who were being helped by Stark. It seemed like there was no task he wouldn't help with, from getting cats out of trees to helping pulling heavy wagons, taming wild beasts, chasing off monsters. The guy did it all. For Francis, it only made Stark seem way cooler. But what's to be expected? The guy inherited the power of a god. The power of a god? Fern would ask. Wait, oh yeah, you were busy with Lugnir. You didn't see it. He said some cool magic chant or something like that. Then his axe transformed into like a super cooler axe. He called on something, the power of Thor? The power of Thor, Fern said. You're speaking about the god of thunder, one of the northern gods. I think so. You're telling me that he was able to draw on power from something like that? For Fern, it had her thinking about Stark in a whole new light. If what Francis said was true, that power, that was in a whole other league. And yet, she never saw him use it very much. He said something about only having a minute. I'm not entirely sure. I really wanted to ask him again. They would eventually find Stark. He was sitting on a bench, watching the clouds drift by, pointing out what they looked like. That one looks like a pile of poop, and that one looks like a woman's body with a nice big rack. Like a ridiculously big rack. Like, I mean seriously, it's a comically big rack. Like the kind of big rack that you tell in a story that's way, way, way too big. Kind of like a situation when you're having a seminar and some woman has to talk about guys who are often too lecherous. But like the woman giving the seminar has like a really, really big rack. Like that's just a big form of irony. No, Fern would think. The boy's as immature and, well, no, just childish as she thought. Interrupting his cloud-watching time, the two would call over to Stark, and the three would go for a walk, with Francis taking time to ask about that power of his. Oh, you're talking about Stormbreaker, huh? Stormbreaker? Fern said with a serious look. How in the hell did you get your hands on Stormbreaker? Well, it belonged to my master, Stark would say. Lord Eisen? He wielded Stormbreaker? Yep, and his master before him and his master before him. Well, at least as the legend goes, it's said that the leader of the dwarves, the first dwarf king, made a deal with the god of thunder, Thor. You see, Thor was said to be a god that had his weapons forged by the dwarves, many of them. And among them all, the finest weapon that was said to have ever been created was the battle axe known as Stormbreaker. Because of that, a pact was formed between the king of the dwarves and the god of thunder. And from then on, each wielder of Stormbreaker could pass it on to the next person. It's been passed down from dwarf master to dwarf master. But you're not a dwarf though, Francis would say. No, I'm not. Kind of makes me the rare one, the first human to inherit Stormbreaker. The problem is that I'm not strong enough. Dwarves' physiology are a lot different from humans. A lot more stronger, can take a lot more of the punishment that comes from tapping into that sort of power. So for me, I can only use it for roughly 1 minute, and when I do, it wipes me almost completely dry. That's why you had to carry me into town after our fight with Lien, and why I had to be treated for so long. Yeah, you became nothing but a dead sack of potatoes, Francis would say. But the power was extraordinary. You were on a different level. But the way you fight now, though, you're so ridiculously strong. And you're saying that tapping into that sort of power takes you out? Yeah, more or less. That's why Master Eisen warned me not to use it unless I absolutely had to. So for the most part, I simply train myself. And I just use my good old battle axe. It's always come in handy and worked for me in a time of need. I only rely on the power of Stormbreaker as a last resort. If using Stormbreaker was a last resort, then for Fern, she could only begin to fathom just how powerful Stark truly was, or how powerful Lord Eisen would have to be, since in all of her time, she never even knew that he had the weapon, and yet Frieren would always talk about just how strong he was, how capable he was. What situation could have even forced him to have to use it? And knowing him, he probably used it at its full power. It only showed that for as strong as Stark was now, there were still so many more levels for him to reach. All the same though, getting back to the main topic at hand, both Francis and Fern, they wanted to see what they could get him for a birthday gift. However, Stark didn't really want one. Well, that wasn't true. It wasn't so much that he didn't want one, it was just that he never really understood what having a birthday gift even meant. He came from a family of warriors who valued strength above all else. You didn't get your birthday celebrated around those parts if you didn't accomplish anything. And well, for Stark, in his family, he was the black sheep. He didn't compare to other warriors, not even to his older brother, Stolas. His father looked upon him favorably. All the same, though, his older brother never looked down on him. But he'll never forgive himself. He remembered the day that their village got attacked by demons. His brother told him to flee. The warrior's code, it said that a true man, a true warrior, someone with any honor or dignity was supposed to stay and fight till the end. It didn't matter what age you were. And yet, all he could do was run. So for Stark, he never really felt worthy of celebrating something like a birthday. He still had so much to prove. For all the things he'd accomplished, he still had the heart of a coward. Always trying to run, turn tail at the first sign of trouble. He wasn't someone that could be relied upon. If worse came to worse, he might just run away again. However, Fern and Francis would shut that notion down immediately. For as long as we've been with you, you've never run, Fern would say. You didn't run when we fought that dragon. And when we were fighting that demon chick. I had to hold her off, and you could have easily ran away. But instead, you were able to take her down, something that I know I couldn't do. And plus, Lady Frieren, Fern would say, she relies on you time and time again. Your strength is important. You're important to all of us. Stark was moved by this. As they were making their way through town, both Francis and Fern would chip in to buy him gifts. For Fern, she got him a silver bracelet. And for Francis, he got him an element stone. What's an element stone? It's a magic stone that channels one of the primary elements. Since you have a lightning infinity, it'll boost into your attacks with lightning magic. Consider it an alternative. You can't always use that Stormbreaker power, at least not until you've mastered it. Otherwise, you'll just become dead weight and I'll have to carry you around all the time. So consider it a stepping stone until you're able to use your power to the full. Stark would take the element stone and place it in the center of the bracelet. 2 gifts from both of his party members. No, 2 gifts from both of his friends, combined into one. By the time they made it back to the lodge where they were staying, Frieren was waiting for the children, with Hamburg steaks coming straight from the fire and onto the plates. They were large Hamburg steaks, definitely ready to be devoured. She knew that it was his birthday as well, and she wanted to celebrate with them. Of course, Stark wondered why the Hamburg steak, and Frieren revealed that it was a part of tradition, the warrior's tradition. It was what she had learned from Eisen, and that's when it all clicked for him. He remembered growing up how his brother would make him secret Hamburg steaks for his birthday. Remembering all the times that his brother looked out for him, never looking down on him or belittling him, always having faith. For so long, he always looked at it from a different perspective, thinking that he was never good enough. That was his humble attitude. Sure, he had his flaws, and he wasn't always the bravest. But bravery wasn't about talk, it was about action. For as long, even in the short period of time that she knew him, he always stepped up to the occasion when was needed. He never ran, he never backed down from a fight. And that was a trait to be admired. As they all celebrated, eating their Hamburg steaks, enjoying the drinks and the small festivities, Stark found himself feeling a form of warmth that he hadn't felt in a long time. The smiles on everyone's faces, everyone gathered together to enjoy a meal like this. This is what it was all about. For him, this was more than just a party of adventurers. For Stark, this felt like family. A home. A home where he'd make many memories that he'd carry for the rest of his life. This concludes Frieren, the Elf and the Archer, What If Frieren Trained Hawkeye, Season 1, Part 5. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that's to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned Monday as we'll continue with What If Frieren Trained Hawkeye with Season 1, Part 6. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.